Hello, everyone. So I hope you're doing well. I want to talk about something I've never spoke about today, and that's the mystic tradition, rather the more mainline religious path I took, is because I was always wary of dualism. And you see when you fall into a dualistic ways of seeing reality, good versus evil, matter versus spirit, sacred versus profane, something subtle happens. Matter, which is, kind of cruder, denser form of experience, begins to dominate our lives. And, it's because it's through the mind that we interpret matter. So the mind itself starts to dominate as well. And when the mind dominates, and then, I had this for most of my life, it clouds over the higher spiritual realms of life. And that's kind of what I talk about on my channel. I talk about the parts work and overcoming the fear and overcoming procrastination, but it really ultimately comes down to this path, and that's a spiritual path. But you can call it a religious path, the path to God, whatever you want to call it. But it's all the same in my opinion. And I think this in many ways is why the West is really suffering, because we're obsessed with the external, we're obsessed with matter, we're obsessed with rationality, with mind, with the things of the world, the things, um, and everything that's on the outside. That's a bigger topic, I think, for another video, but it sets the stage for what I want to talk about here. So today I'm going to explore what it means for our understanding of good and evil, because the language good and evil is everywhere. It shapes how we see the world, how we judge ourselves, and how we think about our struggles. But when you start to look through the mystic lens, something different comes into focus. Now, I know what I'm about to say may cause trouble in some of you, may cause upset some more, the traditional mainline kind of religious people out there. But I believe that like mysticism is right where when they say like evil doesn't actually have substance of its own. In contemporary culture, we tend to think of good and evil as equal opposites, like two armies standing across from each other on a battlefield. But I wouldn't say that's quite right. In a Platonic or Neoplatonic tradition, evil is described as privation of the good, meaning it's basically its very nature is being is good, existence itself is good. And when I say being is good, I don't mean it's good in the way that a sandwich tastes good, or when you go and watch a football team and it wins, your football team wins, or be good because it feels nice. No, what I mean is it being itself, existence itself is pure, it's true, it cannot lie, it is what it is. And that's one reason I think so many of us love animals, because animals can't lie. Now some of you might joke, well, my dog's a bit of a dickhead sometimes. um, but on a deeper level, animals embody a kind of purity. They exist as they are. And we sense that, we love it because it mirrors back to us some fragment of a deeper truth of being. And, this is why we orient ourselves in a way, at least claim to orient ourselves around the truth in silly ways. Growing up in Kent, I remember hearing about like these chav girls saying something like, I always hear that I speak the truth, yeah, I speak the truth, and that that's always kind of stayed with me. Is like why we're all going back to this need for the truth. So there's something there, and at some deeper level, truth is our real food. This is what Christ said: man does not live on bread alone. So for us as men, we begin to see things through this frame that is being good. Being good is good, being is good, sorry. And that evil is simply the absence or corruption of good. So it changes how we deal with the temptations of life. When you've got something to leverage and move beyond, then the temptations of life become a lot easier to handle. And let's be honest, there are as men, us men, there's temptations are everywhere. We're tempted by the powers of the world. And here's the trap: the world constantly tells us, if you get this next thing, you'll be satisfied. The next drink, the next drug, next woman, next car, get a promotion, get the online job that's going to help you travel the world, the next country, next experience. And for a little while, all of that really is fun. I lived in London. I chased that. I had the buzz everywhere I went, and yeah, it's just never gonna do it. It's never gonna, if you're obsessed with drugs, you're always gonna be chasing that original high, and you start to realize that you'll never get back to the first time you did it. It's always gonna be some kind of replica of that, which is just a little bit less. It's just got that less of an experience to it. So in a more in a more mainline religious framework, the teaching might be, well, you're wrong for chasing the things of the world. You must avoid them. And there's truth in that. But it becomes very rigid. It can become, it loses heart. The mystic frame is different. It's not just about brute sacrifice, cutting yourself off. It's about the orientation of the soul. So it's about turning back towards actually what you actually want. And that means not just discipline and sacrifice, but compassion. And these ways of looking at yourself, no judgment. Love for oneself means compassion, and compassion means no judgment. So, one of the most important lessons I ever learned was through women and temptation and the attachment that comes, and having my heart broken. And I remember, like I said in another video, I was obsessed with this Russian girl, and she broke my heart. And then, to escape that kind of pain, I was addicted to alcohol at the time, and after that, I actually quit alcohol because I hit a wall of what can only be described as a kind of spiritual wall where I couldn't do anymore, and I had to take a different path in life. And I got lucky, to be honest. I think a lot of men don't get lucky. A lot of men don't find mentors or kind of spiritual elders, if that's a way of looking at it. But I put all my hope in this woman. She was kind of like my God. I thought that she was going to complete me. I thought we're going to be, we're going to settle down. We're going to have a family. And she didn't. She didn't want that. It didn't work out. And when that relationship ended, it broke me. So I withdrew from society. I was drinking, and I was still going out, and I was kind of there, but I wasn't there, And then this happened a few times. This definitely happened a few times in my life, and it kept breaking me, breaking me until eventually I hit some kind of wall. And I believe that was the moment where I woke up, and it was from then I went on a different journey, and then I had to look into myself. I had to really let go. And I remember just saying to I was in so much pain. I remember it was the third time in a couple of years of heartbreak. I remember saying, I just don't want to go through this anymore. I can't control this. This keeps happening. I felt so out of control. I remember just saying, God, take my soul. Take it. I sort of surrendered. Now, I'm not going to say that was it, and then everything was just fine after that, but definitely something shifted, and I definitely stopped chasing women. I started to see the beauty in holding my masculinity, holding the frame, holding my own, and women's beauty stopped intoxicating me as much. It wasn't the same as meditation. It wasn't the same as that, whatever that divine power that I had inside of me that I'd mistaken for trying to get from the love of a woman. And you can experience that. You can experience that through communion, like a connection with a woman. But this is the issue. This is what we're chasing. And as C.S. Lewis said, it is the love of God that lights the fires of hell. Hell has no power of its own. Evil has no power of its own. It's parasitic. Satan, whether you take him literally or symbolically, is the deceiver. All he can do is trick you into mistaking the fragment for the source. So all he can do is trick you into being mistaken. You think the fragment is the source. It's not. You cannot go beyond that. You cannot see that. You cannot not see that once you see it. So the lesson isn't don't love women, or don't go out and have a beer, or don't indulge every now and then. The lesson is know where that's coming from, to recognize them as reflections of divine beauty, or know that they are not the source. They are not going to take you to that source. Because when you make that mistake, and when you believe they can complete you, you fall into darkness. You become manipulated. You become manipulative. You become greedy. You become needy. You become, this is where you start doing terrible things, all in the name of this illusion that you're chasing. And that leads me to what can only be described as this masculine journey, this masculine initiation. It's not about running from the world, but about seeing through it and seeing what's real, and not turning your back on the ultimate goodness and the source, the heart of God, which is inside of you, which is inside of everybody. Now, that journey, it's been a long journey for me. I've had to really, and making this YouTube channel has been a part of that journey. Definitely, I've gone through a lot, and now it's nice for me to be able to articulate a lot of these ideas and help other guys. I talk about parts work. I talk about meditation. I talk about overcoming, and I feel like all of this is related. All of this is part of what society is putting upon us. The West is gone. We've chased money. status, ideas, politics, nations, are all former shadows of what they used to be. So we've forgotten the source, and we've mistaken the shadows for substance. So, but we can return. Like that's the good news. We can come back to where we came from, and it's not just the Christian path. This is the path, the spiritual path, and you can use Christ as an example, and you can use God, but it's a beautiful thing when you understand it. It's not always. It's always available. It's God's love never goes, and once you know that that's shining in the background, you never really lose that, and you realize that all of the things that don't take you there, women, drugs, the job, the status, money, all of that is kind of like form or play, as Eckhart Tolle says. This is what really you start to make space for love, and that's something that you start to understand on a spiritual level. It's really hard to explain, but so I hope this hasn't been too confusing. This has just been a brain dump for me, and I hope all of you can come back to the source, come back to where you actually came from, the true you, the real self. And if you want if you want to ask me any questions on this stuff, reach out, let me know. Obviously subscribe and comment, and I'm doing one-on-one coaching if you want to speak to me on this. Male, masculine initiation, what the steps are, I can take you through that. Anyway, see you in the next video, brothers. Bye bye.